All right. Well, we are just a little bit after the top of the hour, so I want to go ahead and start. And on behalf of the Texas Association of Addiction Professionals and the Association of Substance Abuse Programs and Recovery People, I want to welcome everybody to our final webinar as part of the ABCs of Advocacy series, all leading up to Recovery Day of the Capitol at the Capitol, which is only a week away. How time flies. And so let me get going here. So just some housekeeping. If you're on the call, if you called in by phone, make sure that you place your computer speaker on mute so that we don't get any feedback. Also put yourself on mute when you're not speaking so that we don't hear the dogs barking in the background or sirens or traffic. And I hear a little squeaking in the background, so I'm not sure just find that's coming from. And then also don't put us on hold because we may end up hearing some of that wonderful elevator music. So today's objectives, we really want to cover two things. One is, so how do we prepare for Recovery Capital Day on March 6th? And then what are some of the bills that we've seen filed thus far, kind of giving us a sense of what we'll be advocating for on Recovery Capital Day. So jumping in, I think one of the important things is to be prepared. So between now and March 6th, make sure that you check the weather. I looked at the weather for March 6th today, and it looks like it's going to be a nice day, but it's Texas, so that might change. And so if it's a potential chance for rain, you may want to bring an umbrella, or just make sure that you keep the weather in mind. Dress for success. I mean, this is our chance to really show what people in recovery look like, and maybe break down some of the stigma that some legislators may have. And so I'm going to be wearing a jacket and tie. If somebody doesn't have a jacket or tie, then, as my grandma would say, wear your Sunday go to meeting clothes. For ladies, I know that you love sporting your high heels, or not. Maybe that's not everybody, but there are some that like wearing high heels. You may want to think about comfortable shoes because there'll be quite a bit of blocking. If
Jason, this is Cynthia.
Does somebody have a comment or a question?
Yeah.
If you could put yourself on mute, we're hearing some background, that'd be great. If you have business cards, make sure that you bring them, because as you meet with the legislators and staff, it'll be an opportunity to share your information with them. The old adage, if you're not early, you're late. This is going to be a very fast-paced day, and so make sure that you're there on time and ready to go. Including accounting for the Austin traffic. Traffic in Austin has gotten worse and worse, and that morning it may be pretty intense, so make sure that you allot some time for that. As well as think about self-care. That's something that we should all be doing every day, but in particular this day, including thinking about any dietary needs that you may have. So, if you're like me, your brain doesn't really wake up until after the second cup of coffee. And so here are some early morning questions that you may be asking yourself. The first, around 7 a.m., you may be asking, so where do I park? Then at 7:30, you may be saying, so where's registration and morning briefing, and where do I get breakfast? At 8, you'll be saying, what's this briefing going to be like? And at 9:50, you may be asking yourself, so where's the group photo going to be? So the next couple of slides will answer these questions. So as far as where to park, the best place for you to park is going to be the Texas Capitol Visitor Parking Garage, and that is one of the entrances is very close to 12th and Trinity Street. It's a multi-level garage, and at that time of the morning, there still should be some parking available. Later on in the day, that garage gets full, and so you may have to look for other garages in that area. Then the next question is, so where is the briefing going to be? And it's going to be at the First United Methodist Church of Austin in their Life Family Center. And the address for that is 1210 Lavaca Street. And if you have your computer up, you can see that I've drawn a red line from the parking garage to where First Methodist Church is. So where the parking garage is going to be on the east side of the Capitol, First United Methodist Church is on the west side, and so it's a pretty walk, but a little bit of a walk across the Capitol grounds to get there. And I guess you could, if you don't think that you can walk, then maybe getting an Uber from the garage over to the First Methodist Church. And the reason I say that is because there's not much parking at all over there by the church. Once there around 7:30, we'll open the doors for registration, and we'll have some light breakfast, some coffee, some orange juice. But if you don't think that will get you through, then you may want to eat or bring some food or snacks for the day. So here's a picture of the Life Family Center, or the First United Methodist Church of Austin, just to give you a sense of, it's right there by the Capitol, and to give you kind of an orientation of where it is. And as far as what that briefing is going to look like, so we're hoping that everybody gets there before 8 a.m. because right at 8, we're going to call it to order. We'll have one of the legislators come over and welcome us to the Capitol, and then quickly move into just the logistics of, how's this all going to work, give an overview of the day. We'll hand out packets, and in the packets, you'll have a map of the Capitol and of the grounds. You'll get your appointment schedule. We've scheduled appointments with your legislators. Bills are rolling in by the day. I got an email last night of a new bill that will show up that I think everybody will like. So we'll have a list of those bills as of midnight, March 5th probably, and some talking points that you may want to think about, as well as leave behind folders. So each group, when you meet with your legislators, there'll be a packet of information that you can leave behind with them. And then also there'll be a report out form. And so as you make your visits, we definitely want to gather that intel of, so how did the visit go? Were there any questions? Any follow-up action items, that type of stuff. So I've been, is there any questions thus far? I know I've been kind of moving through things pretty quickly.
Jason, this is Sherry. Can I add something?
Please do.
Jason, this is Cynthia. I'm sorry. I just wanted to let you know I was on the call.
Hi, Cynthia.
I wanted to mention about the appointment schedule. You said that we have been scheduling appointments for people. In actuality, individuals who are constituents have been asked to schedule appointments, and there's a number of people. I've done that by email. I have emailed back to people, and there's a number of folks who either haven't responded or who haven't let me know that those appointments have been scheduled. I will say there's a good number of people who have responded, scheduled those appointments, given me that information back, and we're getting a really good list of appointments together. But please, if you are one of those people who was tasked with scheduling an appointment, or if you are tasked with that today or tomorrow, that appointment will only get made if the person who's been asked to make it makes it. So please respond. If it's something you can't do, please let us know. And some folks just, in fact, I just had I've had 2 people register since we've been on this phone call. But one of those, sometimes people don't give me who their representative or their senator is, or they give me their U.S. representative or their U.S. senator's name, and we need the Texas senator and the Texas representative's name. So I've emailed back to those people and said, hey, I need more information. So, you know, if you've been getting emails from me, please check and respond to those, because they are relative to those appointments at this point. That's it. That's all I'm going to say. But I will answer I will answer any questions. What did you say, Jason?
Any questions for Sherry? And Sherry, and in case we forget, you know, thank you for that job in coordinating all of that. It's tough and it's complicated, and you do such a great job of coordinating all of that. And for those that have not responded to Sherry's emails, please do that so that we can have a smooth and successful Capitol Day.
Thank you, Jason.
I guess so. After the briefing, and it's going to be fast-paced. After the briefing, then we'll all migrate over to the north side of the Capitol, and right in front of the entrance of the north entrance.
It's Jason. It's the west entrance.
Oh, we're doing the west entrance.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I messed that up, didn't I? So, well, that makes sense because we're going to be on the west side over there by the Methodist Church.
Yeah, so, and it's also got a bunch of stairs, and so it's, you know, people can stack up high, and it makes a better photo op. Perfect.
Okay, well then we'll. Sorry for making that mistake, and it's going to be simpler than what I had thought we were doing. So we'll go on the west side and take a group photo, and hopefully everybody can coordinate that pretty quick, because I think the people are scheduling visits shortly after that, and we still need to get through security. And then the whole reason that we're coming to the Capitol is to make the legislative visits. And in years past, we've had some people that come for the breakfast and for the briefing, but then leave before going to the Capitol. And I would just really encourage you to make the legislative visits with us. It might seem overwhelming if you've never done it before, but the great thing is that you're going to have all your peers with you, and that we can do it together. So during the morning briefing, you'll be given information about your legislative visits, which we talked about. You'll be making visits as a group by voting district. A team lead has already scheduled appointments for you, and as Sherry kind of corrected, that it's really people from the districts that are making those appointments. And if you've been if you're one of those team leads that are making appointments, please get back to us as far as whether you've made those appointments or not. You'll have one appointment with your representative and another appointment with your senator, so you'll be making at least two meetings that day. And during session, you know, meeting with a staff person who's over our issue area is just as good as meeting with the legislator themselves. It's starting to get super busy, and so don't feel disappointed if you don't get to talk to your senator or your representative. Talking to their staff, especially this point in the legislative session, may even be better than talking to the legislators, because it's staff that are feeding them information and kind of keeping them updated on different issues. Sherry and Cynthia, do you have any other things that you want to add about legislative visits? Just the other thing that I'll point out is that the appointments are made typically in the senator or representative's office, but if there's not enough room in their office, they may schedule an alternative room. or I've met in the hallways before. So you might have to be flexible, and know that offices and rooms are located across 7 different floors at the Capitol. Some are above ground and some are below. And you may want to take the stairs and kind of know where the stairs are, because the elevators can get busy and kind of backlog there. And the Capitol always confused me until I realized really there's the original Capitol, and then they did an annex, or what they call the extension, which is underground and created a lot more rooms. So it's really kind of 2 buildings combined into one. And if you're looking at your computer, I've kind of laid things out from the 4th floor all the way down to extension, or what I think is sublevel 2. And you'll notice that example room numbers, when you're say on the 4th floor, you may see a room number that has 4N.10. And the way to read that is it's 4th floor on the north wing, that N stands for, and then room 10. And you can see that that goes down all the way until you look at something that like E1.234, and E1 means that in the extension, kind of that subfloor 1 and room 234. So in your packets, we'll give you a map, and this is just another way to orient yourself. Spending some extra time on here, because I know at least it took me a couple of visits before I understood how everything was mapped out. If you happen to have a representative or senator that's located on the 3rd floor, know that there are some rooms on the west side and on the east side. They're on the other side of the House gallery or the Senate gallery. So getting to those offices, they have to go a floor below and then take the stairs up, or unless that you walk straight through the gallery.
Hey, Jason, can I just ask everybody to be sure that they're on mute, please? We have a lot of background noise.
Thank you. Here's just a map of the 2nd floor. And again, you'll get all this in your packets. This is also online if you want to study it before you come to the Capitol. Here's the 1st floor. That's the floor that you'll be walking into. And if you're looking for the elevators and the stairs, you go through the rotunda and then look at, I think in this map, elevators are going to be highlighted in pink there with the E's. And then the ground floor, that's the basement of the original Capitol building. And then here is E1. You can see there's a whole bunch of different offices down in that subfloor, sublevel 1 or E1. And then there's E2. Other things to be thinking about from your legislative visits is before stepping into the appointment, identify who in your group is going to be responsible for delivering one of the talking points. And say, for instance, the talking points may be broken down into prevention, treatment, and recovery services. So it's just an organized way of going in and making sure that you quickly are able to cover each area. Due to limited time, they're going to be super busy that day. Make sure that you focus on being brief, but make an ask. That's what you're there for. You're there to ask them to support something or to oppose a particular legislation, and then you can also make an offer. You can make an offer to be a resource for them, to connect them with answers. If they ask you a question that you don't know, that's okay. But say that you'll track down the answer for them, and then you can also offer to stay connected with them after session back when they're in their home districts.
Jason?
Sherry, Cynthia, do you have any other advice or guidance around the legislative visits?
Yeah, most of the offices have a guest book in front of those offices where you can sign in, and I recommend that you do that. You may not have the opportunity if you have a very large group to necessarily, get everybody's name down and who they are, but that's also where they get mailing lists from. So, make sure that you sign the guest book in front of their offices.
Perfect. Any other thoughts or advice? And then the other thing is report outs. You made these visits. You probably had some really great conversations. After your visit, make sure that you complete a report out form. That's going to be in your packet that you get that morning. You can describe how the meeting went, including any follow-up actions, any comments or concerns, and then you'll turn those forms into the Recovery Capital team, and we're going to be posted up there at the cafeteria. It's called the Capitol Grill, and it's in the extension on subfloor 1. And I've got a picture of it on a very slow day up on the screen. It's probably going to be a little bit more crowded than what this picture shows, but you'll be able to find us. And that just allows us to, pull all the information together and make sure that if somebody had a question or concern that we're able to get back with them. Sherry, Cynthia, any thoughts about report outs or any advice around this area?
It does seem like sometimes like, oh gosh, I don't want to mess with that, or I don't want to fill these out. If there's, but this is really helpful so that we have a really good summary of the day, and then the people, Jason and Carl with Recovery People spend a lot of time at the Capitol. So does Cynthia with ASAP, and then ASAP and TAP have a lobbyist, Dwayne Gallagher. And so all this information that we can give back to them is very, very helpful. And so even though it seems like, gosh, I don't want to make another trip down to the grill, or, I don't want to fill this paper out right now, what we find in my own experience is if I don't do it then, I don't do it. And so please take those extra few minutes before you leave the Capitol.
And your two meetings may be scheduled, back to back, and you might be, through pretty quickly, or you may have, an hour gap. And so I would just ask, you've made all the effort to come to the Capitol, and so make sure that you stick around and make that second appointment, or go with others to their appointments. We need to try to get as much coverage across all the representatives and senators as possible. I think the natural thing is after we have Recovery Capital Day, then the question is, so what's next? And I think it's really important to stay connected. Stay connected with TAP, ASAP, or Recovery People to get a sense of what we're tracking. You can go to the site. I'll pull it up here in a little bit and track bills yourself and kind of watch it go through that process. If you attended ABCs of Advocacy, you know that as bills move through the hearing process and through the House and the Senate, there are a number of opportunities for you to influence whether that bill moves forward or not. You can make calls, you can send emails in support or opposition to a particular bill. The hearings, you can watch them online. You can if you're at the Capitol, you can register in support or in opposition of a bill the day of the hearing. You can submit written testimony. You can provide oral testimony. There's just so many different ways that you can stay engaged in the process after Capitol Day. These are just some things that I put up, but Sherry, Cynthia, if you want to chime in and talk about what are some other ways that they may want to stay connected after Capitol Day?
Well, sorry, I'm speaker, not speaker, I don't know. One way too is to make a relationship with the district staff in your local area. So every state senator and every state representative has a local office. It may not be in exactly where you are, but it's somewhere in their district, and they have staff members who are there full time, and that is a great relationship to build and can help you. It's much more accessible sometimes, but they are in communication with the folks at the Capitol as well, and they oftentimes can bring the back home perspective to things. And so that's the kind of the next place to go and introduce yourself and talk about some of these issues after Capitol Day.
It's the relationship. Advocacy is about relationships, so definitely want to echo that. Stay connected. So, watching a bill move through that process, I encourage people to get very familiar with the websites, capitol.texas.gov. We spent a lot of time with this website and earlier webinars. But just as bills start getting filed and moving through the process, you can look up a bill, and what I have up on the screen, it happens to be bill, it's SB 717, and you can see there's submenus from the history of the bill to the text, the actual language of the bill, various actions that have happened, companions. So if this bill was filed on the Senate side, that's what the SB in front of the 717 stands for. There's likely will be a House bill or an HB, and then a number after that would be similar language that would be moving through that process. You see the tab that says authors, that's the authors of the bill, and then the very last tab, which I have opened for this page, is bill stages. So you can see that this particular bill, SB 17, has been filed. It was filed on February 8th of 2019, and then it would move through those various stages as far as out of the Senate committee, voted by the Senate, out of the House committee, voted by the House, governor action, and then becomes law. So this is just a great dashboard, a way of seeing, so where is a bill in a particular process. So any questions about the actual Capitol Day, or if not, we can move into looking at what's been filed thus far, knowing that there's got a lot of time between now and March 8th. There'll be more things filed.
Jason, I have a question. Yeah. It's okay to make afternoon appointments too, right? I know there's a whole flurry of activity going on here in the morning, and a lot of people are making appointments for right after the pictures are being taken. I've got houses in a couple of different districts over here, so I've kind of capitalized on that, and I've made multiple appointments, and they're stretching into the afternoon, like after lunch-ish.
So, is it okay? Yes. I would work closely with Sherry, because if you're going into different districts, and depending on how you filled out your registration form, Sherry may not know that you are coordinating meetings in those districts. And so what may end up happening is a particular office would get multiple visits from our group in one day, and that sometimes can make us seem uncoordinated. And so is it okay to have appointments later on the day? Absolutely. But just thinking about how do we coordinate that with the rest of the group?
Can I ask who said that? Who is that?
Ralph and Houston. Ralph.
Oh, hi, Ralph.
Hi.
Hi, Ralph. Yes, he and I have been coordinating. Some of it just has to do with when folks are available. We have appointments scheduled as late as 3:30 currently, and it's it just depends on what works for people. So some folks want to get their appointments done and get out as quickly as they can. Some people have more time to spread it across, and some people, the offices just aren't available until certain times. And so, but yeah, anytime after lunch, and I know, Ralph, you've already scheduled several appointments, and so that's, but connect with me. If you're talking about anything else that you and I haven't already talked about, please connect with me so we just make sure that the left hand knows what the right hand is doing.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'll keep sending you messages.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions about Capital Day? If not, then when we, as far as bills or activity related to substance use disorder treatment, I think the big thing is how do we expand access to treatment? And on the last webinar, we talked about exceptional item 21. And correct me if I get this wrong, Cynthia, but exceptional items, that's when Health and Human Services or the agency submitted a budget request or kind of had that in the line item, but it didn't make it into the actual budget. And so this is an opportunity for us to ask that exceptional item actually make it into the budget. And it's the Appropriations Committee that is making those decisions. And there's so many of those decisions that Appropriations is actually divided into multiple subcommittees. And Exceptional Item 21 is assigned to Subcommittee Article 2. And on the right-hand side here, those are the members that are on Subcommittee Article 2. Did I get close, Cynthia?
No, just the easiest way to think of it is it's a budget increase. So they have to, state agencies always submit a budget basically that reflects their current funding levels. And then if they want more money, they propose those as a list of budget increases. And those are the items that are considered by the Appropriations Committee. There's always way more exceptional items than there are things that make it in the budget. So again, that's just a way to increase money into whatever your program or service is.
And so this is something that we would want to talk about with all representatives and all senators, but especially those that serve on Subcommittee Article 2. Is that correct?
I keep moving the mute button on and off, and I think I missed what your clarification was.
Well, so on Capital Day, we want to talk about this with everybody, all senators and all representatives, but especially those that sit on Subcommittee Article 2
and Senate Finance, yes,
and Senate Finance, because it's on the Senate side as well.
Yes, that's correct.
So does anyone have questions around Exceptional Item 21, or what's the best way that we can support this? Cynthia, is it called Exceptional Item 21 both on the House side and on the Senate side?
Yes, it is, and they've actually designated that. So if you're interested in treatment, particularly on the public funding of treatment, that exceptional item, and it's approximately $47 million, will go to rate increases. And basically, that's never an easy thing for government to approve. but we're obviously with an infrastructure that has been underfunded for quite some time now. And obviously we have a great need to expand services, but even if they dropped a bunch of money on us today to do more services, we don't have the provider infrastructure that will perform those services for a rate that is well below the cost. So basically, we're requesting this rate increase as a first step to much needed expansion.
Any questions for Cynthia on that, or any ideas about what you might message or what you might say to your representative or your senator, and as you support exceptional item 21?
Yes, basically we've basically approached it, and you'll have some of those talking. We'll outline this in your talking points, but basically we've had 3 points, and the first point is basically highlighting the fact that substance use disorders is a costly disease for the state. It drives almost 16.9% of state expenditures because it's an underlying factor in so many other areas of government. Criminal justice, basically those of us in the field understand it affects criminal justice, child protection and adult protective services. The range kind of goes on and on, from homelessness to domestic violence. So any of those programs where an underlying substance use disorder may be a factor is what drives that budget. So one, for the budget, it's extremely costly. The second point that we make is, of course, several decades now of research, both economic, programmatic, and biomedical, have told us that this is a disease, but it is a disease that is preventable and treatable, and we have evidence-based practices that are effective, and that with this research and knowledge that we've gained a lot of in the last 20 to 30 years, we know that a public health approach, not a criminal justice or punishment approach, is the best way to solve those issues and reduce costs. And the third point that we make is basically that right now, if you take in all the folks that have a substance use disorder in the state, or potentially have, it's basically done on a formulaic mathematical formula, and it's about 1.6 million in Texas. And of that, we have a bunch of folks who would qualify for state services. That's basically those that are at 200% of the poverty level. And of all those people who could benefit from treatment, they're only able to serve 5.8% of them. And so basically, we obviously need to expand capacity because it will be an investment that ultimately reduces costs. And to expand the capacity, we've got to have a prepared infrastructure. And we do not have rates where we will have providers, either new providers willing to come into the system, or existing providers who will be willing to expand or invest in expansion on a rate that does not cover cost. So again, that is our first step to capacity expansion.
Excellent. Thank you for that. If there are no other questions or comments around expansion of treatment, I listed a couple of different bills that are already in that are related to recovery support services. So we have HB 1465, which was filed by Representative Moody, and this is relating to a study on expanding recovery housing in the state of Texas. And it would be looking at a lot of different things, including, what's the current census, how many recovery housings are there, what's the need, what are best practices, what are state and federal regulations related to recovery housing. This is what they call an interim report, and the findings of the interim report would potentially set us up for more legislation in 2021. And just late last night, we found out that Senator Campbell is going to file what they call a companion bill. So it'd be the same or similar language to HB 1465, but it would be called SB and then whatever number it gets assigned to it. And the exciting thing about this is that both bills could be going through the process respectively on the House side and on the Senate side, and if they both make it through, then it's reconciled at the end. Alternatively, if HB 1465 got filed, it would have to go all the way through and pass through the House before moving to the Senate. So creating movement in parallel through the system is a greater chance of us being able to pass this before we time out. Because if a bill doesn't pass before the session is over, then it's dead. It would have to be reintroduced in the next session.
And there's a lot of good bills that get timed out at the end of the session. Just don't make it because the Senate, the legislature adjourns. Not so good bills.
Any question on the recovery housing entrance study? If not, another bill that we're watching also is being authored by Representative Moody, and it is HB 1613. And this is relating to the provision of recovery community organization services under Medicaid. So if you remember during last session, there was HB 1486 that made peer services Medicaid billable, but it didn't include, or recovery community organizations are not a provider type within the Texas Medicaid system. And so it just didn't, recovery community organizations are not allowed as an organization to bill underneath that system. And so this would be correcting that, or adding RCOs as an entity that could bill under Medicaid. Any thoughts or questions about HB 1613?
Jason, this is Cynthia. I'm going to have to jump off the call.
I know that y'all are at the Capitol, so thank you for being on as long as you could.
Thank you, and I hope to see everyone next week.
See you next week.
Do you know with House Bill 1613, is there likelihood of a companion Senate bill? Do you know much as far as the likelihood of 1613 making its way through during this session?
That's a great question. If I had that crystal ball, man, I'd be a wealthy person. So I think it's working with Representative Moody to see if they've thought about who they would want to carry the bill on the Senate side. I've not heard specifically who on the Senate side. I know that Carl Hunter and I are helping work this bill, advocating for this bill, and as we do that on the Senate side, seeing if there's any interest, any senator would be interested in it, and then linking them back to Representative Moody's office. But at this time, I don't have an answer for you. Was that Chris? Who's that on the phone? Well, speaking of RCOs, there's another RCO bill, HB 1758, and that was filed by Representative White. And this is relating to a grant program and interagency review of resources to support and sustain recovery community organizations, and specifically these are rural recovery community organizations. So not only would it be establishing a grant program to fund a pilot of 5 rural recovery community organizations, but it would also direct a long list of agencies, Health and Human Services, criminal justice. I think there's about 6 different agencies, asking them, are there any resources within their agencies that that could be used to support and sustain rural recovery community organizations. And in this piece of legislation, the way that rural is being defined is 1 or more counties with less than 100,000 population. Any questions around Representative White's bill? If not, another bill that we found really interesting is SB or Senate Bill 717, which was filed by Senator Lucio out of Brownsville. And it's relating to the exemption from ad valorem taxation of property owned by a charitable organization that provides a meeting place and support services for organizations that provide assistance to alcoholics or their families. And so ad valorem taxation, that's like property tax. So if there was a nonprofit that owned some property that provided a meeting place and support services for someone with alcohol use disorder or their families, then they could be exempt from property tax.
Hey, Jason, I thought that a charitable organization would be exempt from property tax due to their nonprofit status anyway. Well,
they're exempt from certain taxes already, such as at the federal level, and they could be exempt from some sales tax, but currently that just because you're a nonprofit, that doesn't automatically mean that you don't pay property tax. And so that's one of the reasons why nonprofits don't like to own property, is because then they've got to figure out, all right, so how do we pay the property tax and then kind of the ongoing maintenance of property. So I think, if I think this particular bill, I find it interesting because if it's a nonprofit organization that ends up, allowing a 12-step home group to meet there on a regular basis, or helps, recovery community organization kind of co-locate there, then this would, and there's already a list of different use types that exempt you from property tax, and this would just add that to a long list of existing things in statute.
So we're not trying to create something new.
No, there's I don't have it committed to memory, but there's probably 6 to 8 examples already of how property tax exemption is already being used in Texas, and so this would just be another reason why someone could get exempt from property tax.
Okay, I just see, as part of the conversation and having that bill, I see a question that may come back to us is, okay, well, if somebody comes in there and has, there's a 12-step meeting in there a couple of nights a week, for maybe 3 hours total, how would you calculate all of that? Does that exempt them from the total property tax, or just from a percentage of it? Or it just seems there may be some complicated conversation in that. Just wonder if you have any thoughts as to how that might be addressed.
No, those are very valid questions. We've reached out, Recovery People's reached out to Senator Lucio's office and said that, we are really excited about this particular bill, and first of all, wanted to see if they'd be open to some language change, some kind of person-centered language. Right now it says provide assistance to alcoholics and their families. We ask if they would be open to changing that to persons with substance use disorder and their families, and then kind of engage in a broader conversation. But if anything, I mean, I think this is a step in the right direction. It's just then how do we?
Right. We may be tweaking it next session.
Yeah. And the old adage is in Texas it takes 3 times up to actually get passed. And so is this I've never seen this come through the ledge before. So maybe this is just the first iteration, and it gets people talking. And if it doesn't pass this session, then we bring a different version of it in 2021.
Okay.
So I know we're getting close to the top of the hour. That's just a sampling of bills that we're seeing come through. Note that the last day for filing is March 8th, so there's likely to be a lot more. That doesn't seem very long calendar days, but when you look at time in the Texas legislature, that's a lot of time. There's going to be a lot of things that happen between today and March 8th. So just anticipate that there'll be more bills coming through. That's the last slide that I had prepared for today. I just wanted to open it up to just general questions that people had about advocacy in general, about any particular bill, or about Recovery Day at the Capitol.
Hey, this is Aaron Bitter at APA in Dallas, and hey, we sort of broke off when I was asking a question about HB 1613. I just wonder if you could share a little more information on what you know about 1613.
I know that 1613 is the bill language. Representative Moody is from the El Paso area, and they've been working very closely with the Recovery Alliance of El Paso. It's also an RCO. That is, the executive director is Ben Bass, and so I know that Ben has been working closely with Moody's office on the language of that bill, and in order to get RCOs listed as a type of organization that could bill Medicaid. And I think you asked the question, did we know that if there was a companion bill on the Senate side? And I don't know that information. We can loop back with Representative Moody's office to see if they've identified anyone or prefer anybody, and or we can reach out to Ben Bass because he may have information to share that Moody's office is just not allowed to share yet.
Okay, that sounds great.
Just kind of reflecting, I've never seen this many recovery bills come through a legislative session. So I think that has a lot to say with just the recovery movement in general, and all the work that y'all have been doing. So keep it up.
Jason, this is Sherry, and I've had 2 people send me their appointments that they've gotten scheduled while we've been on this phone call. So I appreciate that so much. Thank you, everybody.
Ooh, that's awesome. And I think earlier you mentioned that there are people continuing to register. So yes, it's not too late. Have direct people to the website, get them signed up. I think that we have close to 200 people now, and that's great. But the more the merrier. That's the stronger our voice.
I actually have 158 right now. You may have some duplicates on your list. There was some people who signed up a couple of times. But yeah, get people signing up, and if you have appointments that still need to be scheduled that I've contacted you about, please take care of that. And I should have all of that. I should have all the appointment scheduling information out by 4 o'clock today. That's my goal, so that everybody knows what appointments are already done, and I will be highlighting if there is scheduling needed to be done. So if you get emails from me, please look closely at those.
Well, thank you so much. Well, if there's no other questions, thank you to everybody who has been on the call, and we look forward to seeing you on March 6th for Recovery Day at the Capitol.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. See you soon.
Thank you, guys.